Hey girlfriends, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Stacey Paulin. I am a semi-retired physician assistant working diligently to put myself back at the top of my to-do list where I belong, all the while preparing to realize a lifelong dream of moving abroad and becoming a global citizen. Today, I'm going to be talking to you all about my scouting trip. Now, the scouting trip took place back in October through November of 2024. I have not yet released the location of my scouting trip. I'm saving that reveal for a later video for very real reasons, okay? But I wanted to give you all some details about my scouting trip. I can tell you everything, I mean, all of it except the location at this point. And I also want to give some tips and tricks along the way about taking your own scouting trip and what I think you should be focusing on to make your scouting trip a major success. So I embarked on my scouting trip at the end of October, returned to the States near the end of November. So I was there for almost a month. And I would say that was barely enough time. It went by really quickly, although I was able really to settle into the trip. It felt like it went by very, very quickly. Before I even boarded a plane, I did a lot of research. And I think this is tip number one that I'll give to anybody who's about to prepare to take a scouting trip. You're just in the beginning stages of thinking about moving abroad. Do your research. I'm Greek. Any Black Greeks in my community yet? I'm Greek. You already know. Do your research. Do your research. It will save you so much. One of the things I tell people all the time about my scouting trip, and this location in particular, is that I was in love with the country before I left, but I fell in love with the country once I got there. And the reason I can say that is because I did my research. I scoured the internet for information. I read all the blogs. I read all of the forums. I read all of the groups on Facebook. I watched all the YouTube videos I could find. I communicated with people who were living there. I really, really tried to gather enough information about the country so that I could make the best decision possible about how to spend my time in country once I got there. And it really helped me to narrow down not only what I was looking for, but where to go to find what I was looking for. It really, really made all the difference in the world. So tip number one, you got to do your research. Tip number two, which kind of ties into the previous tip, is make connections before you leave. In those Facebook groups, on the YouTube channels, I was able to DM and converse with people who had not only traveled to the country, but lived in the country. I made friends with a couple. They gave me, a couple of people, they gave me invaluable advice on bus systems and transportation and apps to download and stuff that I would not have known or would have had to learn along the way as I got there. Without asking those pertinent questions and without tapping into the already existing community. So make connections before you go. There are people who have done what you are doing in the places that you want to do them. Utilize their experience and their expertise, and it saves you. It saves you so much time and headache, and it made the trip that much more seamless for me. So that was really, really helpful. I flew into not the capital city, but the other major city in this country. And from there, I had to take two buses. No, that's not true. I did the two bus thing as I was coming back home. When I landed, I stayed overnight and I took another flight from this city to another city. It was about a 45-minute flight, very quick. And then I stayed overnight there. And then the next day took a 3-hour bus ride to my final destination. My idea before I left was that I was going to split my almost month-long trip between two cities that were on my list as contenders. I was going to spend half of my time in one city and half of my time in the other. When I landed in city number one, I stayed in the countryside. So it was maybe about 15 minutes outside of the city center. There were buses were a little, you had to walk a ways to get to a bus stop. The taxi service was great getting there, but getting taxis to come out to where I was, it was difficult because internet was a little sketchy in some areas. So I had some challenges there, but I stayed for a little while. I loved it. I loved it. People were kind, helpful. Weather was perfect. It was beautiful. And as I began to every day go from the countryside to the city center, countryside to the city center, I said to myself, to really get a pulse of what the city has to offer, I need to go and stay in the city so I can walk the streets. I can go to the markets every day. I can listen to the people. I can talk to the people, see what the streets are doing. And that's what I did. So maybe 4 or 5 days into my first Airbnb stay, I found accommodation in the city, told my host, sorry, I'm not going to finish my stay here. It's nothing wrong with this, with the place, nothing wrong. It was beautiful, but I need to relocate because I need to be in the city center. They were fine with it. I found a lovely apartment on the north side of the city, and that's where I spent the remainder of my time there. Beautiful, beautiful place. So tip number 2, or the next tip that I'll give, is if you can have a couple of different experiences in one city, do that. If you have access to a countryside and you know that may be something you're interested in doing, if you want to do the chickens and the cows and the gardening, because there's lots of folks who want that kind of life where they're going, try to live that, try to experience that. If you want to have more of a city experience, make sure you're in a city center where you can walk, where you can take public transit, where you can get a feel of how the bus system and train systems and taxi systems work. Be in the thick of things so that you can get a full experience. And if you can, juxtapose the two. Did you like the countryside better than the city? What did you like about the countryside that you didn't like about the city, and vice versa? It just gives you a more broad perspective on the places that you're considering moving to. I would say about a week into my trip, I began to take my tours. Before I left for my scouting trip, and in the process of doing my research, I found out that there was a tour guide that came highly recommended in the area, born and bred, not an expat or an expat in the city giving tours to other foreigners, but a born and bred member of this community who was giving tours. Not only tours for people who were considering relocating, but historical tours of the city. If you wanted to know what the city is about, what's the history, what's the background, what's going on behind the scenes, this was the guy that came up over and over and over again. I reached out to him. We put together an itinerary together, and this was a few months before my trip. So I knew when I got there, I was going to be touring with him 2 days in a row. Day number 1 was a tour of the city center. And I was still, at this point, I think I was still in the countryside. So we toured the city center. Not only did he give me a history of the city, which was beautiful, but he also gave me a residential tour. We walked the streets of neighborhoods. He gave me recommendations of neighborhoods to stay away from. All the neighborhoods in the north, south, east, and south that he recommended, he took me to those places. We got out of the vehicle. We walked the streets. We looked at houses. He would show me the signs where the houses were for sale or for rent, talked me through how to rent a property, how to buy a property, what typically comes with a furnished apartment, a semi-furnished apartment, an unfurnished apartment. He talked me through utilities and how to navigate that. It was invaluable, invaluable. The second day, I requested that he take me a little farther out of the city center to a couple of cities an hour or so outside the city center. Totally different microclimate, totally different feel, difference in population, definitely. And the tour for day number 2 was nowhere near as long as day number 1. Day number 1 was it was all day. Day number 2 was maybe 4 to 5 hours. And I realized pretty quickly that day number 2, the cities that we went to, I wasn't interested in living there. I wouldn't want to live there. Going to visit, going to enjoy the day spas that they have there and the pools, and it's a paradise there. Yes, but I didn't want to live there. And so this is my next tip. If you are able to secure a tour guide that is knowledgeable of the area you're considering, knows some of the nuances that you'll never know unless you are a member of the community, it is worth the money. It is worth the money. I paid, and I'll be transparent here because I think, it's important that we keep the gates open for one another, right? If we can share information, share it. A 2-day tour, I would estimate day 1 was about an 8 to 9 hour day. Day 2, again, about 4 to 5 hours. Transportation all over the city, to and from all the cities we went to. We would stop and get ice cream and little, drinks and things like that, so I could try some of the traditional fare available in those areas. What else was included? Just his expertise was what you were really paying for, right? All in all, it was $300. I paid $150 deposit before I left, and then at the conclusion of day two of the tour, I paid the additional balance, or the remaining balance of $150. Money well spent. Money well spent. And I took video all the way through until my phone died. Every day, I made recordings. I took pictures, and then every day I came back from the tour, I recorded myself doing a recap of my thoughts so that I could remember everything that I learned. So the next tip, I forget the number that I'm on at this point. The next tip would be keep a good log of the things that you're learning when you take the tour. Take video, take pictures naturally. But I think that added bonus for me was the recap at the end of the night, at the end of the day. So that everything I was learning historically, all the little minutiae and detail that made the tour so spectacular, I won't forget those things. They're on my phone. All I have to do is rewatch the videos, and I'll be reminded of all those little nuggets that he dropped for me. I'll add this on too, because there were several properties that I was interested in looking at on the inside. That 2-day tour didn't include going into properties. I was able to reach out to him later into the trip and ask him for any recommendations on properties that would be open to me, taking a look. He followed up with me and said, absolutely. We took a tour of 2 separate properties, and I was able to get in and see what the going rate is for the kinds of properties I'm looking for. And that was invaluable too. I took pictures, I took video, and I did a recap on that as well. So very, very, very helpful. It was after the 2-day tour that I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna stay here a while. This place is starting to grow on me. Again, I had decided in the beginning to split my time evenly between city number 1 and city number 2, which was 3 hours away. I decided to stay the entire almost month in city number 1. I had already booked an Airbnb. Luckily, I decided to make this change before I lost the money for that Airbnb. I politely contacted them and told them I would no longer be coming. They understood. And I stayed put in city number 1. And in hindsight, it was probably the best, outside of the tour, it was the best decision I made on that trip, on that scouting trip. So my tip, sit a while, stay a while. Don't be so quick to get all the cities in one scouting trip, because I think the beauty of sitting still in the city that I was in, city number 1, I was able to begin living like I would normally live my life. I wasn't worried about, I got 2 more days, 3 more days. I got to start packing up my stuff. I got to get all this activity in these few days. No, or in a couple of weeks. There's so much to do that you can't really cramp it all in and really extract all the goodness that's around you, and the not so goodness that's around you. Um, because the scouting trip isn't perfect, your location's not going to be perfect. You want to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you only get that if you sit a while. So that's my next tip: sit still for a minute if you can. Make several trips back and forth if you need to do that, but when you get to a place, stew a while there. And that helped me so much. The next tip that ties into that is when you get to your place and you begin to sit a while. I have notes so I don't forget what I want to say. Skip the tourism and live life as if you were at home. Live your life as you intend to live it when you finally make the move. These are the ways I did that. I found a beautiful apartment in the city center, 3-bedroom, 2 baths, high rise. It was gorgeous. Elevator, the whole thing. And within walking distance to all of the places I needed to go. The parks, the green spaces, the markets, the supermarkets, everything, the gyms. So I was able to walk to and from the markets every day. I was able to walk along the rivers and into the green spaces every day. I had access to the parks. I could walk through the park every day and sit and just chill for a minute. I got a gym membership because y'all know I don't play. I don't play. I got a gym membership. I was able to work out my 3-4 times a week. I was able to do my running weekly like I normally do. I lived my life like I would normally live. And you can't really do that if you're jumping from city to city to city every week, every few days. The beauty of me sitting still was that I was able to feel. I was able to get a full experience of what life would be like living there because I was doing life as I normally would do there. Beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. And I think that was probably outside of the tour, the best decision I made. Absolutely. As my trip was coming to an end, I just continued to do that. I mean, that's what I did. There were some exciting things happening in the city. For instance, there was a huge festival that came into town the last couple days I was there, and I was lucky to catch it. If I had done what I originally intended to do, which was spend the latter half of my trip in city number 2, I would have missed the festival. It was amazing. I took video, pictures. I was out in the streets with all these people. The parades were coming down the street. The food was delicious. I mean, it was just, we had a time. We had a time. The other thing I was able to do was meet local people, not only expats, but local citizens of the city, born and raised in that city. I, through my research, found a language exchange group in the city, and they meet twice a week. And I was able to meet up with them, introduce myself, make friends, make acquaintances at least, so people know who I am. They added me to the WhatsApp group. I'm a member of the WhatsApp group. And it was great. We were able to speak in English part of the time, in Spanish part of the time, and everyone was so very kind and welcoming. I really enjoyed that. So that's my final tip for the video. Plug into the local community where you're going. Try to make connections, not just with the expat community, but with the local community. If your goal is assimilating, you need to have those local connections with people who don't speak English, or maybe they do, but that's not their native language. And all of that is made possible, however, when you stay put. I think that's so important. Stay put a while, tap into the local community, get to know what they're up to, what the locals are doing, get a feel of the landscape, of the cityscapes, get a feel of the weather, the change in weather from hour to hour. For instance, in the mornings, the sun would rise around 6:30. So the sun is like blazing through my window early in the morning. And that's usually the warmest part of the day, morning, early afternoon, 11, 12. Then as the day goes on, it gets cooler, it gets cloudy. You get a little bit of rain that comes in, and that was the pattern every day. So that was my scouting trip. I came back pretty much the way I traveled out of the country the same way well, that's not true. I traveled out of the country a little bit different than the way I came in. I stayed again the whole trip in city number one. I had to go through city number two in order to backtrack. There were some visa things that I had to do while I was in country. So I went to city number two to do those things. I met with my facilitator there. We got that paperwork done. So I had to take a 3-hour bus to get there. I stayed overnight, got the paperwork done, took another 3-hour bus ride across the country to where the airport was that I would be leaving from, stayed overnight, and then flew back to the States. And that's how my scouting tour ended. That's how my trip ended. I had a wonderful time. And I think between the research that I did beforehand, the 2-day tour that I did with the tour guide, and staying in city number one for the entirety of the trip, all of those 3 things together made me realize that I had found a place. I found a place that if I didn't want to look anymore, I didn't have to look anymore. Perfectly content there as a starting point. Because there were some challenges there. No doubt there were challenges there. Some language challenges, not terrible. My Spanish is okay. It's not perfect. I'm beginner intermediate. But definitely conversational. I have no problem getting around town, talking to people. I'm fine with that. But other logistical challenges, definitely. And even through all of that, I said, goodness, I could definitely live here. Definitely live here. Beautiful experience. So for those of you who are about to embark on your scouting trip, I wish you all the best. I hope these tips and tricks will give you a little food for thought, but also give you some ideas of things that you can do to really, really make your scouting trip one that will make a difference. You don't want to fly all over the world, 3, 4, 5, 6+ hours away from home, stay somewhere and not really leave with that feeling of not extracting everything from that trip that you possibly could have. And so I think if you implement some of those tips that I've shared, you'll get the best and the most out of your scouting trip. All right, ladies, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please like and subscribe. Please and thank you. And I'll see you all in the next video. Ciao.